Then on Sports Central, we go over a college football game preview and prediction on the 2022 LendingTree Bowl matchup between the Rice Owls and the Southern Miss Golden Eagles. Both teams have had good seasons getting to this point. A pretty even matchup as well coming up here in this bowl game. Should make for a good one. We'll be going over a full game preview and prediction on this matchup here today, starting with their team trends. Rice lost to North Texas 17-21 was the final score there. So Rice finished out the regular season at 5-7. Didn't quite get up to 6 wins, but there weren't enough 6-win teams at the end of the season, so Rice did qualify as a 5-win team. And if I'm right, I think Rice is the one 5-win team to make a bowl game this season. And they're taking on Southern Miss, who just beat Louisiana Monroe 20-10, finished out the season at 6-6. And overall, both teams kind of had bumpy finishes to the season. Rice is coming in with a 3-game losing streak. Meanwhile, Southern Miss is coming in off of a win, but they have lost 3 of their last 4. Games will be on Saturday, December 17th in Mobile, Alabama. Your kickoff is 5:45 p.m. Eastern. Spread's going with Southern Miss by about a touchdown here. To be exact, they're favored by 6.5. The over-under is 46.5, and the FPI is also going with Southern Miss, 66.4%. Series history, it's actually tied 6-6. We've seen these two teams play each other a decent amount, especially in recent history. In fact, you might not know this if you don't follow the group of 5, but Southern Miss actually was in the Conference USA with Rice even last season. This past offseason, Southern Miss moved to the Sun Belt. That's where they're at now. And so Rice obviously still in the Conference USA. We saw these two teams play each other a decent amount in the past few years, and it turned out the series to be tied 6-6. So the win streak is Rice by 2, so the Owls did win the past 2 matchups, but Southern Miss has won 3 out of the past 5. Stat comparison, Rice is 93rd in points per game, 120th in points allowed. So both sides of the ball, Rice is, they've just been a bit inconsistent this season. They're averaging 25 points a game and allowing an average of about 34. Pass yards a game, they're 74th. Rush yards a game, they're 81st. And then for yards allowed, they're 49th in passing, 82nd in rushing. So you could say the main strength for Rice is their passing defense, even though that's just barely into the top 50s. As for Southern Miss, they're 106th in points per game. Defensively, though, this team has shown potential, and they're talented there. They're 45th in points allowed, 108th in pass yards a game, 99th in rush yards. Then for yards allowed, 67th in passing, 62nd in rushing. Recent matchups, Rice lost to North Texas 17-21. They got blown out to UTSA the week before, 41-7. Lost to Western Kentucky 45-10. They beat UTEP 37-30, lost to Charlotte 23-56. So once again, down the stretch, it's been kind of rough for Rice. They've lost, once again, 4 of their past 5. So, I mean, this team, at one point, they were 4-3 on the season. That was back in mid-October. But since then, once again, they've lost 4 of their past 5. But, I mean, they've been impressive at points this season. I mean, you look back to September when they beat Louisiana. That was an impressive win. They beat UAB in a close one. Beat Louisiana Tech in overtime. So Rice has shown potential this season, even though down the stretch they've had a couple of terrible losses. I mean, allowing 56 points to Charlotte wasn't good. Getting blown out to Western Kentucky and UTSA wasn't impressive either. But I mean, it's been a bumpy season. Of course, the quarterback situation has been also something up for question down the stretch. As of right now, AJ Padgett has been the starter the past couple of games. But as for Southern Miss, they beat Louisiana Monroe 20-10, lost to South Alabama 20-27, lost to Coastal Carolina 23-26, lost to Georgia State 14-42, beat Louisiana 39-24. So Southern Miss, they have played a bit better down the stretch, even though they've definitely taken some losses too. I would say Southern Miss has been more competitive. I mean, that Georgia State loss was ugly, but, I mean, they kept it close against a good South Alabama team and kept it close against a good Coastal Carolina team. So, I mean, if you look at Rice on the flip side, they just got blown out to both Western Kentucky and UTSA pretty recently. So, Southern Miss has been more competitive, even though it obviously hasn't been the cleanest season either. And, I mean, Southern Miss has also had an interesting quarterback situation. Trey Lowe has started down the stretch for the Eagles, and it looks like he's going to be the starter for this game as well. Key points for this one, Rice 5-7. Offensively, they've been poor down the stretch. And, I mean, yeah, quite honestly, on both sides of the ball, it's been rough down the stretch for the Owls. They've just been too inconsistent. And Something you could say is a bright spot for the Owls is that they do have a deep backfield. They've got 7 players over 100 rush yards, even though they don't really have a big standout in the backfield, which is definitely unlike Southern Miss. Southern Miss has got 1 key rusher, 1 key player in the backfield, and that is Frank Gore Jr. But yeah, for Rice, this team has got a deep backfield. The quarterback situation, once again, has kind of been a mess this season for this team, and it's been that way for both teams here. But I mean, look at Rice. This team is going to need a strong game defensively. They've had trouble scoring points down the stretch. They haven't scored more than 17 points since early November when they played UTEP and scored 37. So it's been tough for Rice, and this team is going to need to force some turnovers and maybe get some defensive points as well if they want a chance to win this one. But as for Southern Miss, this team has performed better down the stretch. They've been more competitive against good opponents. Once again, I mentioned the games against South Alabama and Coastal Carolina. Both were losses, but close losses, and they were pretty competitive there. They got a standout running back in Frank Gore Jr. I mean, if you're Rice, definitely got to contain him. And defensively, this team has been more consistent down the stretch, that's for sure, versus Rice, which Rice is, I mean, once again, just not played very well down the stretch. And so it's been a bumpy season for both these teams. But that said, let's get to the prediction here for Rice and Southern Miss coming up here in the LendingTree Bowl. And I'm going to be going with Southern Miss here, 27-17. I see this being more of a moderate to a low-scoring game. I think in the end, Southern Miss gets the win here. And I'm pretty comfortable picking Southern Miss in this matchup. I think Rice puts up a fight for a while, but I could see this being a game where the Eagles pull away down the stretch. I just feel like they're the better team here. They have played better down the stretch. Rice has been too inconsistent, and I think Southern Miss in the end gets the win here. I'll say 60% towards the Eagles. I considered bumping that up to 65%, so it's kind of somewhere in between 60 to 65. But I want to be a little bit cautious just because it is bowl season. We've seen, I mean, bowl games are pretty tough to predict. So I'll say 60% towards Southern Miss. Over under 46.5. Give me the under for this one, and Southern Miss to cover that spread in the end. And I'm pretty comfortable picking Southern Miss to cover the spread here. I think they win this game by a touchdown or 2, and in the end, 27-17 is my predicted final score. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this matchup, and I appreciate you guys watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.